Hey guys, so today I am playing some Battlefield 4. Does anyone remember that game? It's still a pretty good title. Well, of course, I have been very caught up with the hardline beta, so it's been a very long time since I've jumped on Battlefield 4. So today, I thought I would jump on the CTE servers, to be precise, and play some more of this title. Now, recently on the CTE servers, they have added all of the upcoming Dragon's Teeth weapons, something I'm sure a lot of you guys are aware of. Of course, there have been a lot of weapon reviews bouncing around. Now today I am not going to be doing any weapon reviews because of course the reason these weapons are in the CTE is so we can test them out, see if maybe they need a buff, a nerf. So the stats we're seeing on these weapons are very likely to change before we see them brought into the full title with the Dragon's Teeth release. But with all that said, today I want to take a closer look at the brand new MPX PDW, a weapon that up till now a lot of YouTubers have largely ignored. Now this is a weapon I was very excited to see in the Dragon's Teeth DLC. Of course, alongside this weapon we are receiving the Macmillan Sniper Rifle, the Bulldog Assault Rifle, the Unica 6 Revolver, and the Desert Eagle Pistol. So, out of all these weapons, alongside of course the Desert Eagle, the MPX was a weapon I really wanted to see in the game. And this is a weapon I wanted to see for a pretty long time now. This is something I spoke to you guys about a long time before we even saw this weapon in the Dragon's Teeth release. You guys asked me in a Matt's mailbox which new weapons you wanted to see in the game, and the Sig Sauer MPX was one of the top weapons. So I'm going to take a little bit of responsibility for this weapon being in Battlefield now. I do know there are quite a few developers of Battlefield who watch some of my videos, and of course this is a brand new weapon that we've never seen in an FPS game before. So as you can expect, I was pretty excited when we saw this weapon available in the community test environment. Now the only issue with the CTE is, currently there is only about one populated server. Now whether or not that's because of the hardline beta, a lot of people are still too busy playing that, or people just can't be bothered downloading 15 gigabytes of just extra repeated Battlefield 4. So currently there is only one 64-man Conquest Large server that I can actually join, which as you can guess isn't the best environment to test out a close range PDW. This is the kind of weapon that when the full Dragon's Teeth DLC is released will prove very popular on Domination, Team Deathmatch, Operation Metro, Operation Locker. So playing on Paracel Storm 64-man Conquest Large with a close range PDW isn't the greatest experience. But with that said, I did manage to have a few good games on Flood Zone and some other maps, especially Flood Zone. It's a map I do really enjoy now, and it does favour very close quarters weapons and close quarters combat. So how did the weapon fare? Well, I've got to tell you guys, on first impressions, this weapon is very, very impressive. If it stays the same as it does in the CTE for the full release of Dragon's Teeth, it will no doubt be probably the most popular and heavily used PDW in the game. It is pretty refreshing to see a weapon you've wanted in Battlefield to turn up and actually not suck. Of course, there are a lot of weapons brought in DLCs that just seem completely pointless because their stats just aren't as good as other weapons that are already available. So we get all these extra surplus weapons that never really actually get used. So this is actually a little bit refreshing to see a brand new weapon which probably will prove very, very popular. Now for me personally, if this weapon wasn't restricted to the engineer class being a PDW, say it was more of a carbine weapon, it probably would end up being one of my most used weapons. Now for my playstyle, I like to be very aggressive. I move around the map a lot, which means you end up fighting targets at close range, medium range, long range, which is why I usually go for the assault class. Assault rifles are a very good universal weapon. Now, being a PDW, the side effect of all PDWs means it isn't very effective at long range. Now, for a PDW, a very small one, it is actually surprisingly effective at medium range. As you can see in this gunfight inside the lobby, now and again, you can fire an entire magazine down range and still take out targets at a surprisingly long range. So let's briefly go ahead and take a look at the stats, but before we do, let's bear in mind that this is the CTE, so you do have to take this with a pinch of salt. We could very easily see all of these stats changed before the weapons are finally released. So with that in mind, currently this weapon has a rate of fire of 850 rounds per minute, so one of the fastest firing weapons in the game. Alongside that, it has a very unusual 27% maximum damage up to 12 meters that then drops off to 13 damage at 50 meters, so also a very high damage model for a PDW. Now to even that out, it does have a pretty small magazine with only 26 rounds or 27 with one in the chamber, so comparatively much smaller than other PDWs, especially something like the P90 with a 50 round magazine. Now, with all those stats in mind, so far I have found the balance between damage and ammunition for this weapon does mean you can take out multiple targets at once. In fact, you do see it a few times in this video, but because of that smaller magazine count and high rate of fire, you will be reloading very, very often, which does mean you can sometimes get caught out reloading at close range. But with a 2.1 second reload time, it isn't going to be the end of the world. Now, of course, if this was Battlefield 3 and we still had chance to have extended magazines, if you could stick a 35 or 40 round magazine on this weapon, there is no doubt it would be the most powerful close range weapon in the game. Huge magazine, high rate of fire, great damage model, but of course, alas, unfortunately in Battlefield 4 we don't have extended mags. Now, something I have noticed whilst using this weapon, it slowly started to feel very, very familiar, and then it struck me, this weapon is basically the M5K, another weapon I have been desperate to see return in Battlefield 4. Now, in Battlefield 3, that weapon had a 900 round per minute rate of fire, so still a little bit quicker than the MPX. Of course, it did only have a 21 round magazine, so technically less rounds than the MPX. But of course, as I said, you could stick a 30 round magazine on there and make it practically a very, very powerful close range assault rifle. Now, for me, that weapon was just the go-to weapon when it came to any close-range match. You put me on a team deathmatch on Noshar Canals with the M5K, and you would just shred players to bits. So, if you could put an extended magazine on this weapon, it would basically be the M5K of Battlefield 4. A very similar reload time, of course, a very similar small magazine capacity. The M5K does only do 25 maximum damage, but it does have a better minimum damage of 13.75. So, these weapons are very, very comparable. This is the M5K of Battlefield 4. So if that is a weapon you've missed from Battlefield 3 and you want to get your hands on it again, I recommend as soon as Dragon's Teeth comes out, this needs to be the weapon you unlock. It will prove very popular on close range maps. So that about wraps up today's video. If you did enjoy this more informal weapons impression video rather than a very strict formal weapon review, tell me down below. As I said, I don't want to do a weapon review for a gun that still could massively change before the full release, so I prefer to do a little impressions video. If you did enjoy, don't forget to leave a like on the video. It does massively help me out and I really do appreciate it. But in the meantime, guys, thank you for watching and I'll see you soon.